Welcome to episode 74 of the Valley Sports Talk podcast. We are a day late. I am going to blame Brandon on that. No
I'll
offense.
take fault.
Just couldn't figure out a time to record this week, but that's okay. We're just going to be posting one day late, and the next week we'll be back on the usual Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. But we have a decent amount to talk about as NHL Free Agency opened a week ago today, I believe.
Yep, it
Um,
did.
it did, yeah, a week ago today. Or a week ago tomorrow. A week tomorrow.
Yes, sir. And I mean, we were supposed to next time you guys were supposed to see us was supposed to be a draft recap, but nothing happened. First time in 17 years there was no trades in the first round, so
Yeah. So
figured we didn't
not
want
to
to
talk
waste your
about.
time.
There was kind of everybody knew Bedard was gonna go one. I realized that I titled the last video that Bedard's gonna have a better career than Fantilli, and I didn't even end up talking about that. I'll say my real thing quick. Not that I don't think Bedard's gonna be good. I just think Fantilli can be better. There.
Fair enough. I mean, it gets views, right?
True.
Does help. So moving on to, I mean, first week of free agency, like Noah said, we're just going to go in alphabetical order of NHL teams, excluding one team. I'm going to save till the very end because I want to make Noah possibly a little bit frustrated, but we'll see. Um, we got basically half an hour to run through all 32 teams, so we got to hurry up. First, we got the Anaheim Ducks. They added Alex Killorn. And Radko Gudas. That's basically what they did. They still have $30 million in cap space, and they have to re-sign Troy Terry, Trevor Zegras, Jamie Drysdale, and Lucas Dostal, if you want to count that. Plus, they're looking to trade John Gibson. So,
I actually
what do you
really
think?
I really liked Anaheim's way or Anaheim's moves. Obviously they are not still not gonna be a good team next year. They're still very young, but I'd honestly love bringing Alex Killorn at a what do you get, like 4.7 or something for 4 years.
Oh my God. His contract is, I think it's a 5-year contract. As you know, my Wi-Fi is terrible. It is 6.2 for the next four.
6.4 for the next two.
6.2 for the next four.
Okay, yeah, okay. I knew it was I actually really like it. I was listening to Spit and Chicklets podcast yesterday and I agreed with everything that they said. They're a very young team and just having a guy like Killorn who's won Stanley Cups. He's 32. He's probably on the downside of his career, but he took a 4-year deal with a young team. Just I believe that him and even Gudas are just going to be experienced pieces in that locker room that'll give the Ducks a building block moving forward. So I actually really like their moves.
Yep, they just have to figure out what's going on with John Gibson, and as of right now, they have four defensemen signed. So they got to get Jamie Drysdale signed and then add another piece in free agency or trade.
And
Moving on to the
they still have a lot of prospects down in their system. Like they are stacked
100%.
with
Yeah,
prospects.
for sure. Moving on to the Arizona Coyotes, they brought in Jason Zucker, Alex Kerfoot, Nick Bukestad, and Sean Dursey, and re-signed obviously both their goalies. They don't really have their whole every person on their roster is signed, so nothing really there, and they still have $16 million in cap space, but just a few minor additions.
Yeah, obviously it sucks being a Pittsburgh fan losing Zucker. He's been a great player for Pittsburgh the last couple of years. He's just one of those players that always goes out and gives 100% effort no matter what day or night it is, no matter how injured he is. But I think these are just sort of filler gaps. I think Kerfoot was a 2-year deal. Zucker was 1 year. They're just sort of plug and play guys until Arizona can start bringing up their prospects, which is a fine thing. Like giving these guys the cap's supposed to go up drastically next year, so it makes sense that Zucker's taking a 1-year deal, maybe a bit of an overpay more than he probably would have gotten in Pittsburgh if he re-signed. But then he's going to be probably playing first line minutes with a player like Clayton Keller, so his stock might go up, and he's looking to get a big deal next year in free agency. And Arizona's not going to be very competitive for the next couple of years, so it completely makes sense the thing they're doing. They're sort of just filling their gaps until their prospects start to come up.
Yeah, and a team that definitely didn't have a great start to their free agency is the Boston Bruins, who only have $6 million left in cap space. Still have to sign Jeremy Swayman. They added Kevin Shattenkirk, Lucic, like we said, and JVR. And they still also, again, they also have to sign Trent Frederick. And if they have to find out if Patrice Bergeron and Krejci are retiring or coming back.
I actually thought that JVR coming in on a 1 year, $1 million deal was a bit of a bargain. I still think he can produce on a second line, especially a team like Boston. Obviously, it was kind of weird. They moved Hall and Foligno for basically nothing, and I think that was sort of to try to move space to talk about to try to re-sign Tyler Bertuzzi, who we will talk about when we get to Brandon's favorite team. So that's a kind of failed experiment. I think the main reason why they moved on from Taylor Hall was to try to re-sign Tyler Bertuzzi. So that ended up sort of backfiring. But I mean, like I said, bringing in JVR and Kevin Shattenkirk both on 2 mil aren't gonna deals are gonna really kill you. They're both gonna produce way more than that $1 million cap that they brought in. But like you said, the Boston Bruins might be going from the record to possibly not making the playoffs next year. Like I could totally see them not being in the playoffs next year.
Hot take, hot take. Next we have the Buffalo Sabres, who didn't really do much in free agency. They brought in Jordan Greenway, 3 mil, two
That was a weird
years.
one.
Um, Other than that, they just kind of brought back the team. They brought in Eric Johnson, a good veteran presence, over from Colorado, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, they were 6 points out of a playoff spot last year. So I think that just one more year of the young guys getting more experience, getting better, another offseason to build some strength to get better. I don't really hate their free agency. I mean, they didn't do much, and I'm actually okay with that because I think that the team they have is a possible team that can make the playoffs next year.
Yeah, and another team that I actually don't think did anything yet is the Calgary Flames. They currently have $2 million in cap space. Um, their defense are set, but set as in we don't know because we don't know who wants to go. And their forward, they currently have nine NHL forwards on the roster. So with $2 million of cap space, nine forwards, and a lot of players that want to go, where's the Calgary at?
Yeah, Calgary's in a tough spot. They didn't make the playoffs last year. They got a couple guys signed to some big deals for a long time, and it doesn't really seem like very many people want to stay there right now. They might see that Calgary is not gonna sort of get any better with the cap space situation they're in. And we've seen Tyler Toffoli wanted to get out of there. There's another player that I'm missing that wanted to get out of there. If you can think of it, hit me. But
Uh, there's a
oh,
ton.
Hannafin, he might get traded out.
Yeah.
Um, so it's a Calgary's in a weird spot. I still think that they can be a competitive team, but they don't have much cap, so they can't really make their team much better unless they sort of shed one of their bigger contracts, which might be harder to do than it may seem.
Yeah, moving on to the Carolina Hurricanes have had a great free agency so far, bringing in Michael Bunting, re-signing Jordan Stahl, bringing in Dmitry Orlov, and bringing back both their goalies, which I was shocked about. I know we talked about them a couple podcasts ago, and I thought both of them were potentially gone, but bringing both of them back on decent deals to keep that three goalie tandem going.
Yeah,
That's
I
all I got.
thought that they had a really good free agency. Obviously, they don't have much cap space going forward. Still have to sign a pretty big piece in Brett Pesce on the D. I didn't mind the Orlov signing. I was actually listening to like I said, Spit and Chicks podcast, and they think that he might be a guy that they're looking to trade. Like they might be a sign look to trade him for a forward help right away.
Who's
He
that?
Orlov.
Okay.
Um, Obviously Bunting, I think he maybe got a little bit more overpaid than he probably should have. I'm not the biggest fan of him. I don't really think he brings a lot to a table other than him getting put in a very good situation in Toronto. So maybe a bit of a overpay in my opinion there. Some people might think that he got paid fine or whatever. But obviously Carolina is a good team. And like you said, I was kind of shocked that they brought back both their goalies. I thought they're going to give I forget his name a start, but that young guy that can't speak very much English, um,
Kachetkov.
Kochetkov, thank you. When they at first I thought that maybe Freddie was going to go to like Pittsburgh if Pittsburgh didn't bring back Jari. I know they were talking about that a bit, but then they ended up bringing him back both on completely fine deals. And so yeah, it'll be weird, but I still think Carolina's a great team.
Yeah, moving on. We have the Chicago Blackhawks. Weren't super big in free agency, but really where they made their moves was trades. They brought in Taylor Hall, they brought in Nick Foligno, Corey Perry, and some pieces like that. And obviously they had the number one overall draft pick, so pretty good offseason for them. The biggest thing is right now looking at cap friendly, they currently have four defensemen on the roster, and Seth Jones, Nikita Zaitsev, Connor Murphy, and Jared Tenorti, who I don't even know.
Yeah, obviously, whenever
So
you go ahead.
go, you got it.
I said
Take it.
obviously, whenever you have a chance to take a generational superstar or a generational prospect in Bedard, it's going to be a good offseason. I do think he's going to be a great player moving forward. And I really like the moves that they made to sort of complement him. Bringing in Taylor Hall, who's a former Hart Trophy winner. Nick Foligno's a savvy veteran, and same with Corey Perry. At the same time, Corey Perry and Nick Foligno were only brought in on 1 year deals, so I could totally see them being a trade deadline, save retain 50% and trade him to a contender, get like a second or third round pick back for both of
Mhm.
them. I could totally see that. But I actually don't mind the way that they're sort of starting to bring back Chicago. You got Bedard. You're gonna put butts in seats, um, and even just the complimentary pieces they made around him, I thought were great.
Yeah, they're going to be one of them teams where, as a fan, you're going to be happy because they're not going to be amazing, but they're going to be fun to watch. And if you're not going to be good, at least be fun, right? So that's good for them. Colorado Avalanche, I thought they also had a pretty good off season so far. Bringing in Miles Wood, bringing in Jonathan Druin, who I heard Nathan McKinnon had a pretty big part in that. The trade for Ross Colton and re-signing Bowen Byram.
Yeah, we talked about the trade for Ross Colton in the last podcast, so I won't get into that. But I actually like the Duran signing. He hasn't really been able to figure it out in the NHL yet. After being drafted really high, he played with McKinnon in Major Junior in Halifax, so maybe he's potentially going to fit in on that line with him. Maybe he can not revive his career, but he can be helpful to a team that won the Stanley Cup 2 years ago. Bowen Byram was just sort of a bridge deal to see if he can sort of figure it out and get better after having a healthy season. Um, Miles Wood, I found it a bit of a weird deal given the term. The money was fine with me, but 6 years for a player like him who
Yeah,
hasn't really been able to stay healthy was kind of weird. But at the same time, he's not nothing more than a third or fourth liner at best. So I actually didn't mind it. He's a straightaway speed guy, could play the PK. And yeah, I actually thought that Colorado had a pretty decent offseason.
yeah. Another team that hasn't done too much in free agency, but did a lot through trades was the Columbus Blue Jackets. Acquiring players like Damon Severson and Ivan Provorov. Um, and they drafted who Noah thinks is going to be possibly the best in this draft in Fantilli. So what do you think?
Yeah, obviously, like I said, I really like Fantilli. I think he's going to be a stud in the league, and the fact that he dropped a three was kind of surprising to me. I thought he was a lock to go too, but obviously, Anaheim liked Carlson over him, which I mean, Carlson's basically a younger version of Anze Kopitar, in my opinion. Um, but yeah, I still don't think they're going to be competitive this year. I think I'm going to give them at least 1 or 2 more years before they start to sort of get back into that playoff mix. But I think they're definitely taking the step in the right direction. Obviously, you still have Johnny Gaudreau, you got Line A, you got Werenski there, so you have a competitive team. Another year from Kent Johnson. And another guy who I think is going to be big is going to be, I think, is David Yurchek. He's a defenseman. They took him high 2 years ago, I believe. I think he's going to slot in nice in that top four, even play top minutes with Werenski. So I think Columbus is doing this rebuild right, and I think they're going to start taking a step in the next direction, but I don't think they're going to be competitive this year, maybe the years to come.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on to Dallas team that was in the final four. Didn't really do too much, brought back pretty much the same team, except adding Matt Duchene 1 year, 3 mil.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you got a guy like Matt Duchene for 1 year, get him at 3 mil, he's still a great player. You can say, oh, he got bought out. He's got to be washed. No, I still think he's a good player in this league. I still think he can obviously produce. He was producing in Nashville. So I feel like getting him at 1 year, 3 mils, sort of a prove it deal. See if he can still produce, and maybe they can possibly re-sign him to like a 4 year deal in the middle of the season. I think he'll just replace sort of Max Domi on that second unit, maybe third unit if the how deep they are. But yeah, I think Dallas is still gonna be a competitive team.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on to Detroit, they brought in JT Compher, they brought in Clint Costin, and they brought in Leafs legend Justin Hall. And their only piece of work they have to do. Oh, they also brought in another Leafs legend, James Reimer. My bad. Their last piece of work is Joe Veleno is an RFA still.
Yeah, honestly, I'm kind of not confused, but kind of confused on what the Red Wings are doing. Everybody says believe in the Yzer plan, but I don't. I'm starting to sort of not see it. Justin Hall, I believe, should not be an NHL defenseman. I don't know if you agree or not, being a Leafs fan, but I just don't see how he got this much money. I don't think he's a very good
That
defenseman
shocks me. That
whatsoever.
shocks me.
James Reimer, I got no problem with, 1 year deal. JT Compher, I think, was a bit overpaid. I don't think he's a second line center like he's getting paid to be. I think he's just was in the right situation in Colorado. I don't think he's a bad player at all, but 5.1 mil is a lot of money for 5 years.
Hmm.
I don't know if that contract's really going to look too good in the next couple of years. I don't think Detroit got much better, especially because their goalie situation is still confusing. I mean, Husso's probably their starter, but I don't think he's the type of starter that can win them a championship. And, they've sort of, I don't know. I just don't think Detroit got any better. Or I don't think they took the next step and what I was kind of hoping that they would do.
Yeah, and speaking on a team that didn't take the next step, we have Edmonton Oilers. They brought in Connor Brown. They currently have $5.5 million of cap space, and they still have to re-sign Ryan McLeod and Evan Bouchard. And when you're looking at the contract, Hall just signed. Bouchard's got to be looking for a big payday, and
Oh, totally.
they don't have much cap space to work with here.
I think I said a couple episodes ago, this is the most important offseason in the McDavid era. I don't think that they're doing jack shit with it, excuse my language, but they are completely failing this offseason. You just had a guy that scored 160 points and you haven't done anything. You replace him, you put Connor Brown. Sure, he's can be a good player, but he played 4 games last year. He's coming off a torn ACL. Nobody knows how good a player is going to be after a torn ACL. I think Stuart Skinner's a fine goalie, but that Darnell Nurse contract is killing them. It's already killing him. He's not worth whatever they paid him, and starting to see as they don't have cap space. So I don't see. I think that the LA Kings got better than the Edmonton Oilers this offseason.
Yeah, for sure. And we haven't been talking about losses teams have taken, but Edmonton lost a young, good Clint Cost and a young, good Kyler Yamamoto. So
Yeah, they definitely
they,
the one thing they needed is depth, and they lost two of their depth pieces right there.
yeah, they couldn't afford it. Coming into the second place, Florida Panthers. Speaking of players they lost Gudis, but he got, in my opinion, he got overpaid quite a bit. So
Probably,
um, I
but
don't think they
Anaheim
could
can
have
afford it.
afforded that. But yeah, you never know. They brought in Oliver Ekman-Larsson, which I think is a great signing for them. And they also brought in Evan Rodriguez, 4 years, 3 mil. And other than that, they kind of just brought back what they had.
Yeah, I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. I think Oliver Ekman-Larsson's is a low risk, high reward sort of signing. He didn't really work out in Vancouver, but I remember when he was on Arizona, people were calling him a top 10 defenseman. So I don't think top 10 defenseman is sort of the thing he can get back to, but I think he could be a great complementary piece. Montour is going to be out to start the season. And Evan Rodriguez, I'm pretty familiar with him as he was in Pittsburgh for 2 different stints, and he's sort of just Swiss Army knife. He can fill in wherever you want. He can play center, he can play wing, he plays first power play unit. He's got a shot, and I think low risk, high reward for that signing. 3 mil, I think, is a great deal for him.
Yeah, and um, again, a team that you were just speaking about, the LA Kings, re-signed or extended Anze Kopitar, brought in Pierre-Luc Dubois, and other than that, they kept it pretty low key. But I mean, they got so many prospects in a loaded roster already. You got guys like Brant Clark coming up. Um, they signed Dave Riddick and Cam Talbot along with having Phoenix Copley already in net.
Yeah, that's the one question mark. I think they got great up front. They lost a couple depth pieces, but whenever Pierre-Luc Dubois is playing his game, he's a great center in this league. I think did get a bit overpaid based off what he is. I'm not saying that he got completely overpaid, but maybe just a little bit. Um, but I mean, having a 1, 2, 3 punch with Kopitar, Dubois, and Danault as your centers, it's great. And like you said, Brant Clark's going to come up. That was moving Sean Durzi to make room for him. I think he's going to be a stud. I might be a bit biased, but I have a lot of stock invested in him. The one thing that a question mark is the goalie. Cam Talbot wasn't healthy at all last year for Ottawa. He was like the goalie Ottawa brought in to try to be competitive, and it just completely backfired. David Riddick's a okay backup, but if you don't have Cam Talbot healthy, you might be screwed.
Yeah, we're gonna move on to Minnesota, who is paying $15 million for the next 2 years in buyout cap, so
Yikes.
can't really do too much. They didn't really add much. They still have to sign Philip Gustafson. He's an RFA in net, and really they lost Matt Dumba.
Yeah, yeah.
Other
I
than
mean,
that, it's basically the same team.
it's the same team. I think they'll still be competitive. I don't think that they're really gonna compete, but I definitely think they're still a playoff team. I don't see their Stanley Cup chances going up with this offseason. I think Philip Gustafson's a goalie for the future. I think Fleury's just sort of a stopgap to sort of mentor him. So if they can get him signed to something long term, but maybe not break the bank as they are, like you said, paying 15 mil in buyouts, I think that it would be a good deal. Maybe their profit, they drafted Marco Rossi 3 years ago. He hasn't been able to stay up in the NHL, but he had a good year in the AHL. I mean, I think he had 52 points in 58 games, which I mean is fine. So maybe if he can come up and get some depth up there, they'll be okay. But like I said, they have Kirill, they have Matt Boldy, they still got a Zuccarello who produces. I think they'll be okay. But like I said, this buyout money is really hurting them, and I just think that's one of the main reasons why they just can't really get better. They're sort of stuck in the purgatory phase.
For sure. Another team that really didn't do too much is the Montreal Canadiens. Where do you see them heading into next year?
I think that like they started doing it like I think they got to trade their vets. Players like Mike Hoffman, Christian Dvorak. They're not going to be competitive in these next couple of years, or they'll be competitive, but I don't think they're going to be playoff bound. I think obviously getting players like Caulfield signed and players like that, are good moves. A lot of people didn't like their pick of Reinbacher at 5. I personally didn't mind it. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. I'm sort of a neutral guy on that. But I think they got to start offloading those vets and getting as much as you can get from them, giving their young guys time to sort of develop. And I think that they'll sort of figure it out within the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I don't mind the pick. I every GM and hockey analyst says the hardest position to find is the right shot defenseman, and they got the best one in the draft, so I'm okay with that. Um, and they're already loaded up front, which is basically it was a forward heavy beginning
Very
of the
short
draft,
speed.
so I was okay with it. Moving on to Nashville, obviously they bought a couple players out. Signed Ryan O'Reilly, signed Luke Shen. They're just trying to become the Leafs, I think. Um, and that's pretty much it in terms of signing. In terms of major signings, they have both their goalies signed. We still don't know about if they're shopping UC Saros or not, or Askarov. And basically, other than that, they're bringing the same team. They're bringing the team back, I guess.
Yeah, I think Barry Trotz, the buyouts were sort of just a culture change. I think they played great last year. They didn't have Duchesne or Johansson for really those games. They started to play good near the end of the season. So I think Barry Trotz just sort of wanted a culture change, bringing in a guy like Ryan O'Reilly will do that. He's not producing like he used to, but he's still a very above average player. He's a great two-way. Luke Shen got a bit overpaid in my opinion.
hmm
I think he was more in the 2 range, not 2.75. So I don't know if that contract really looked good in year 2 or 3. But I don't know. I still don't think they're going to be competitive. They'll be sort of that like they were this year, the team that just hangs around a wild card spot the whole year.
Yeah. Moving on to a cup contender, we got the New Jersey Devils re-signing Timo Meyer, bringing in Tyler Toffoli via trade, um, and Siegenthaler through trade. Um, and going with Vanacek and Schmid in goaltending.
Yeah, we already talked about the Timo Meyer contract. But I did like the Toffoli trade. You know, he didn't have to give up much. He had to give up what's his name? Greg, what was his name that they traded? It was a weird name.
It is a weird name.
Anyways,
We'll get to it.
they didn't give up much for him. They him that in a third. So I think their top six is obviously one of the better top six in the league. I'm still concerned about their goaltending. I know that they're gonna roll with Schmidt and Vitek, but it still concerns me. I don't think Schmidt really will play as good as he did in the playoffs, and I don't think Vanacek's a starting goalie that can win a championship. So I know they won around this year, but then they didn't win around the next round. So I don't know. I still think that they're a cup contender, obviously, but I'm still have question marks about their goaltending situation.
Yeah, the Islanders didn't do a whole lot. They signed Pierre Engvall to a 7-year, $3 million contract.
It's a weird one.
Um, they also extended Ilya Sorokin to an 8-year, $8.25 million contract. And other than that, they didn't get up to too much.
Yeah, that's such a Lou Lamoriello contract. All the three he gave out. He gave Scott Mayfield a big extension too.
Oh
As
yeah, my bad.
well.
Scott Mayfield, 3.5 for the next 7 years.
Yeah, those are Lou Lamoriello contracts. He won't be there when those contracts come to an end. So if they look bad, then it's not his problem. I doubt he's going to be there in 7, 8 years, given his age. But I just
Also, I mean, sorry to cut you off, but something we
you're
got to
good.
realize is we've been living in a COVID situation where the cap hasn't gone up in forever, where in 7 years, a $3 million contract is going to be like an entry level contract. Like,
Yeah,
well, not, but you know what I mean? It's going to be like it's going to look like what a now 1.5 mil contract looks like.
yep, for sure. But anyways, I don't think they really moved the needle at all. They're just an average team. I think they made the playoffs barely last year, and I think that possibly the teams that didn't make the playoffs behind them got better than them.
Yeah, the other New York team, the Rangers, they had a steal in my opinion, getting Blake Wheeler at 800,000. Um, Other than that, they signed Leaf legend Eric Gustafson. They brought in Jonathan Quick to try and break the all-time USA goalie wins. And they got about $6 million left, and their only RFA is Alexi Lafreniere. Oh, and Keandre Miller. Sorry, so they got two pretty big pieces they have to sign still. Keandre Miller looked really good, gonna probably ask for quite a bit, and Alexi Lafreniere has left us wanting a lot more.
Yes, for sure. Again, I think they got worse. They didn't do much in the playoffs after making two big trades, bringing in Patty Kane and Tarasenko. They still, like you said, they have a chance to bring those guys back, but with only 6 mil left, still having to sign Laff and Miller, I think that 6 mil is going to go to those guys right there. Um, Again, I don't think they did anything to move the needle. I know I'm a big New York hater, being a Pittsburgh fan, but this is just me being an honest hockey fan. I don't still think they're going to be a good team. They're going to be a competitive team. They're going to be a playoff contender, but I don't know if they got any better.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. The Ottawa Senators, obviously the big thing with Ottawa is Alex DeBrincat. They still have to sign Pinto as well, who's a pretty good looking young prospect. But the big thing with them is the 5-year, 4 mil Jonas Corposello contract.
Yeah, I don't really like it, to be honest. I don't think Korpisalo's a like the goalie that gets them over the hump. I feel like it's one of their prospects, whether it's Sogard or another prospect they have down deep in the farm system. Like you said, they got to figure out what the heck they're doing with Alex DeBrincat. If they're going to trade him, it doesn't seem like they're going to get very much for him, which is honestly a terrible move of assets because I think he's a great player. So it's sort of not scary times in Ottawa, but just sort of they started to get better, and now they might have hit a sort of a plateau phase, and they got to figure out how the heck to get over that.
Yeah, just to quickly move along teams, we got Philadelphia Flyers. Not going to name names. They let go of a lot of old pieces, brought back some younger pieces. I think they're going to be the worst team in the NHL this
I
year.
couldn't agree more. They seem like they're just completely tearing it down, and they drafted Mitchkov, who's going to be in Russia for 3 years. So I feel like that's sort of their timeline to rebuild. They're sort of deciding, okay, we drafted a guy that's going to be in Russia for 3 years, and hopefully we'll come over. Let's be bad for 3 years, and then we'll start to get better. Which I mean, I got nothing against it. I don't feel like they were going to be a competitive team.
The only team that could definitely rival them for that is the San Jose Sharks. We have next, they added Anthony Duclair, but really the big thing is what's going on with Erik Karlsson.
Yeah, I don't want to um I don't want to jinx it, but I think he's going to be a Pittsburgh Penguin. He seems
He
like
might be. They're
seems
front
like they're the
runners.
only. It seems like they're the only team that really is serious, or that's I'm seeing is still in con talks with them. Which, as a Pittsburgh fan, I mean, bringing in a Norris Trophy, former Norris Trophy winner, you go a guy that broke 100 points last year. I have nothing against. They have some guys that they could sort of Petrie could get out the heck out of here to make that contract work. So I think it's more likely that they trade him rather than keep him. I think they are going to get the most value out of him right now. So I mean, I'm hoping it's Pittsburgh, but maybe not. Not going with.
Yeah, and another team that was in there but is currently dropped out is the Seattle Kraken, who got $12 million in cap space. Still have to sign Cale Fleury and Vince Dunn. Um, brought in Kailer Yamamoto, Pierre Edouard Belmar, which was like 30 minutes ago, and then Brian Dumoulin, ex Pittsburgh Penguin.
Yeah, Doolin's a pylon, so he that you can have him. But like they made the playoffs last year, and again, I don't know if they got any better. They lost two depth piece, I think, in Geeky and someone else. They lost somebody else that they probably shouldn't have let go. So I didn't really like their offseason, but I mean they're still have young players, Beniers, you gotta hope Shane Wright pans out. So I still think that they're gonna be a competitive team, but maybe they're just sort of waiting for those young guys, if that makes sense.
Yeah, talk to me about the St. Louis Blues. They didn't really add anything.
They
Didn't
brought in
really
Kevin
lose
Hayes.
anything.
They brought in Kevin Hayes. They're
Yeah.
only paying him like 3.5 or 3 mil, which I mean, as a second line center, third line center is a completely fine deal. He's still a good player. They got some good young pieces in Kyrou, Robert Thomas, guys like that. But I still think that like they're a purgatory team. They're a team that has a chance to make the playoffs, may make the playoffs, may not make the playoffs, may suck, may be amazing. They're sort of one of those teams that will be sort of the middle of the pack to the top of the pack, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Next, you got Tampa Bay, who is currently $3 million over the cap, lost quite a bit of players, and still needs to sign Tanner Jeannot and a backup goaltender.
Yeah, I mean, I think we sort of saw this coming. I don't think it's sort of the downfall of Tampa, but I don't think that they are going to be getting better anytime soon. They're sort of going to stick with the same roster because they can't really make any moves. I think they got to figure out a way to sign Jeannot. You can worry about a backup goalie later because Vasilevsky's going to play 60 games. You need a plug and play guy that can play 22, 23 games around that. But yeah, I think we're sort of starting to see the downfall of Tampa Bay, where they're starting just to get into that competitive range and not the cup contender range.
The Toronto Maple Leafs lost quite a bit of players. They seem to be at least $2 million apart with the William Nylander contract,
Yeah.
but brought in Tyler Bertuzzi, Max Domi, Ryan Reeves, and John Klingberg, and still need to sign Ilya Samsonov.
Wasn't a fan of the Ryan Reeves contract, not gonna lie. I don't
Me
really
neither.
like the 3 years, maybe two. Two I was fine with.
It's grown on me. Grown on
Um
me.
Bertuzzi didn't mind it. Domi actually pretty I like the Domi contract. Klinberg a bit confusing in my opinion, but the number one question mark obviously is Nylander. He's looking like he wants north of 9.5, and I don't think he's worth that. I don't think Toronto wants to give it to him, so they got to figure that out. Are they going to move him? Are they going to sign him? I think it's more likely they move him than sign him.
Yeah, Vancouver didn't really do a whole lot. Um, I don't know about that.
They're
Vegas
just they're
again.
just sort of they're just sort of
Yeah,
chugging along.
yeah, exactly. Vegas brought back Ivan Barbashev. Other than that, I mean, they signed Aiden Hill to a 2 year,
Overpaid, but
4.9
he's
mil.
gonna now Logan Thompson becomes available, and I think getting a guy like him at 750K for 2 more years would be a steal for any team.
Yeah. Washington is another team that didn't do too much. They
Pacioretty's a
still
low risk, high reward, but I think it's gonna be more low risk than high reward based off his last couple of years. He hasn't been able to stay healthy. That's about it.
yeah, it's a contract that can't go wrong. And the last team we got the Winnipeg Jets. They again, another team that didn't do a whole lot. But again, they've got a lot of question marks there.
Their
So
biggest, yeah,
let's
they're a team full of question marks. You know, I like the return they got with Pierre-Luc Dubois, but like, what are they going to be? Who's their goalie going to be next year? You know, they signed Brossoit. They just signed Dominic DiVincenzo to his entry level contract. Don't know if you saw that. We
yeah.
watched it this year in North Bay, going to school there. Um, you know, who's their starting goalie going to be next year? I don't think it's going to be Hellebuck, to be honest. I think he's gone.
Okay, so last team quick. We got 3 minutes. I want to see if we get through this. This is where I want to see if I can get you a little upset. We got Noah's Pittsburgh Penguins. They brought in Riley Smith. They brought in Nola Chari. Um, they brought back Tristan Jarry. They brought in Nedeljkovic. Um, all of these, they're not terrible signings. I don't know what you think about it. So, and they also brought in Ryan Graves. Sorry, my bad. You talk, and then I want to ask you a question.
Okay, I didn't mind any of the signings. You know, we had question marks at goalie, but I don't think we were getting any better than Jari. I think, you know, I think they tried to get a guy like Hellebuck or Saros 100%. I think Dubas reached out to these guys, but I think the price was a bit too steep considering they're in on Eric Carlson. So I think they sort of went to familiarity. And if Tristan Jari can stay healthy, you know, I think he can be a top 10 goalie when healthy. You know, he showed it 2 years ago. It's just if he can stay healthy. I like the Achari contract.
Love that contract.
Obviously Riley Smith was just to bring in Zucker, was just a Zucker leave, which he did. Lars Eller's depth, Nieto's depth. Ryan Graves, I don't mind actually. I think he's gonna either slot in with the new addition, Carlson if he comes, or Letang. It's either gonna be Pedersen or Graves with Letang because they're both sort of defensive minded, and Carlson and Letang are both offensive. So I actually didn't mind it. The biggest question is, does this keep Pittsburgh competitive?
That was my question. So personally, being an outside, not a fan, I think a team that you had to just go all in. Kyle Dubas played it a little bit safe. So I just want to run through teams in the Eastern Conference. I want you to just say better or worse. Is Pittsburgh better or
Pittsburgh
worse?
better or worse?
Columbus.
Okay. Columbus
Columbus.
better.
Flyers.
Better.
Washington.
I think they're better.
Islanders.
I honestly think they're better than the Islanders. I don't think the Islanders are
Rangers.
much better. I still don't think they're better than Rangers. I think they're just a bit below them.
Devils.
No, they're not better than the Devils.
Hurricanes.
No.
Canadians.
Yeah.
Red Wings.
I think they're better than the Red Wings, yeah.
Senators.
Yeah.
Sabres.
I still think they have a slight edge on the Sabres.
Panthers.
Given that they went to the Stanley Cup final this year, I'm going to say no.
Lightning.
I don't think they're a better team than the Lightning. Still no.
Leafs.
No, I still don't think. I think the Leafs are better.
Bruins.
That I think that they're that with the Bruins losses. I think they slot in right with the Bruins.
So
That might
basically,
be
what we found out
hot
by that
take, but
experiment is they're still a fringe wildcard team. And
I do.
so
But I think Carlson. If they bring Carlson in, and I don't think Dubas is done.
100%. He better
Okay,
not be.
I think that'll end the podcast. If you guys liked this episode, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and we will see you next week.